Remind everybody to, as we go through tonight and go through the questions that we have, should thoughts occur to you later, over the next week or so, please feel free to submit them to us. Oops, I had everybody's name in the chat. There we go. There are our names and email addresses and phone numbers, so feel free to submit them to us in writing, drop us an email. As we begin, I'd like to kind of put some context on this. The strategic framework purpose, this is the last in a series of 3 dreaming sessions for the strategic framework for the consortium. So this Consociate Council helped shape the consortium for the next 3 to 5 years. We're undertaking this strategic framework. The goal is to build a vibrant and engaged consociate spiritual community by strengthening existing relationships and in the spirit of sharing of the heart, or the order of the house, reach out to others. And the previous 2 sessions were around sharing of the heart, and tonight we're some kind of bringing it all together in order of the house as we come from our different parts of the city. And the purpose is to look at how we live out, we as the consortium live out the consociate spirit statement as it defines our unique St. Paul province values. Key among our, well, tonight, as I mentioned, we're discerning the state of the house and identifying elements that will move us forward into the future. Key among our planning assumptions is that every consociate lives out the CSJ consociate spirit statement and also lives out the congregational and St. Paul province directives within the CSJ community, as well as living them out outside the CSJ community in their own lives, and apply the charism outside the community into what they do. Every consociate is called together for the life of the world, striving to be beacons of hope according to congregational chapter directions. Our outcome is to have a plan drafted based on feedback gathered from these dreaming sessions and surveys for the consociate community in the context of the CSJ community and the larger community. So we will have that plan drafted and brought forward. And I will turn it over to Anita for the reading of the consociate spirit statement.
Well, this is our prayer for tonight. And I just want to say, to honor all the consociates, and Carol, you were probably one of them, probably some other people here, who created this years and years and years ago. And it is amazing to me that these words are relevant. They speak to us, I think, both as an individual as well as a community together. So with that, let us pray. Stimulated by the Holy Spirit, we move in communion with the Sisters of St. Joseph and consociates toward profound love of God and neighbor without distinction. We are fire builders, inspiring and supporting one another to bring forth our gifts. The source of our flame is the everlasting love of God. We are peacemakers, engaged in a troubled world, confronting unjust systems of power. Although we are challenged and tested, we seek to be authentic, vulnerable, grateful, and hopeful persons. We are co-creators of a loving community of courageous leaders and collaborators. We commit to living the prophetic mission of the Sisters of St. Joseph and embrace the challenges of living right relationships. With sincere prayer, we call on holy wisdom tonight to guide our every step.
And now we will turn to Terry to take us to the first question. And the questions will also be in the chat.
Okay, so I think we have 20 minutes per question. There's a nice small group. So hopefully everyone will have ample opportunity to speak. But if we're nearing the end of our time and someone needs to still speak, if you could kind of self-monitor a little. And I'll say the question and then let's just regroup for a moment in light of the spirit statement we just prayed before then the first person can go. I think we're seeing everybody on the same page, but in the past, Anita's kind of been calling it. So between the two of us, this should be an intimate little group. No need for a breakout room tonight. So anyway, here we go with question 1. And if you have the chat up, like on mine, it's over on the right side. If you're more of a visual person that needs it in front of you, it's a fairly complex question. So here goes. How do we, as the consortium, follow the founding principles of the Lipui community as we go out to address the needs of our times? And how could we do this work? So we'll take a moment to sit with that.
So for me, it feels like a time of going inward for myself, but also for the consociates and or the CSJ community as a whole, to go further inward and strengthen ourselves before we, of course, we're going to keep going out there, but taking some time to do that and try to come to know ourselves without distinction, like not sister, consociate, friend. We're just the CSJ community. That's it.
Barbara?
Kathy's comment, thank you for that comment. It just reminded me again of the motley nature of that first grouping, where, you know, they couldn't even pray together because some of us didn't know how to read. And so it puts it before my mind how important each member of this community is, no matter how no matter our uniqueness. And you know, your other comment, Kathy, about coming, looking inward, I mean, that kind of was the inwardness of the community. You know, you scatter your work across the city and you've got to come home for supper. And it's, I mean, that's what this group has been for me, that kind of coming home for supper or communion or Eucharist, whatever you call it, so I can get up the next day and do something worth my being here. So thank you.
Jenny wants
Thank
to
you,
speak.
Barbara. Yep, I got the chat. So. Jenny.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You know, I've been thinking about, I've been pondering this the last couple of weeks, coming up to this get together. And It's like I almost want to do a scan, like, let's look at all the various ministries that we're doing and maybe just give a brief assessment. Are we hitting the mark on this? Is there something that somebody thinks of that we could be doing that we're not doing? So those are the kinds of thoughts that have been coming to me. And of course, as I say that, I realize I don't even know what's going on for sure in them because we've all been separated for these many months. But I guess, are there things that we could be reaching out to, or could we look at, the ministries we have to see if there needs to be any changes or modifications, that kind of thing.
Do you want to speak more to how we're going to connect, or do you have any visions for as we come out of COVID, what you would like to see in how we connect?
I'm really looking forward to that day that we can all get together. But I don't know when that's going to be. But it's just, for me, like I can see you and I can see me, but it's hard to sort of pick up the energy of the group, when we're apart. But that's not an excuse. It's just, it's just a reality. And so I'm wondering if at some point we should, come together and kind of see how things are going from the various perspectives and what maybe is really lacking that needs attention. That's the kind of thing that comes to my mind.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Marilyn?
I was really happy to see you, Denny, on the show because this is the only time. I mean, I think you and I are the only people that live in Mendota Heights. And maybe we could find somebody else who lives in the near proximity, but I was wondering how we would each, in a small group, conduct an analysis of the area where we are, like those sisters of so long ago did. I mean, we're just not going to walk out in the streets and see, starving people. But, if like Denny and I and some others got together and tried to analyze what was going on, especially in West St. Paul, I know they have a lot of needs. And I think that not just, this is just a localized example, but each of you in your own neighborhoods, maybe we could come up with some kind of a template or just a small series of questions to help raise our awareness of what we might be looking for, to see what needs help. I mean, right now I can just think about volunteering at the Hearts and Homes or whatever they call the new shelter for the people in Grundlet Center, but I don't know more what to do. I just thought maybe we could think of some ways of judging what needs to be done or what to look for. I'm done.
Okay. Fran?
There. you probably would like to hear me, at least for a little while. When I think about how do we follow the founding principles of the Lipui community, I think about getting into their hearts and minds and trying to imagine where they were coming from spiritually. So I'm not so much thinking about what they did, you know, what the actions were, what they said, well, this is our work because this is what we're seeing. But if we're going to follow those founding principles, for me anyways, I want to understand what moved them toward that love, and what inspired them. And I think capturing some of that would certainly create a flame inside of me. So that's where I'm going. That's what I'm thinking when I think about this question. There's a spirituality here that maybe we can tap into, or maybe it helps us understand our own spirituality better, or our own commitment better to this way of life, you know, because I really think that's a big deal. That's a really big question. How do we follow the founding principles? And maybe it's a recommitment or an enlightenment of our commitment. All right, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I don't know if everybody has the chat on, but Barbara has said, won't bold moves be an opening for assessing ministries? And that was framed with Marilyn's talk. And then Anita just has said the 2019 congregational chapter and St. Paul province chapter directions is a guiding framework for the work that is being asked of us. So those were side comments. If you don't have chat, if you can't see, especially Patty, I don't know if you're on a computer or phone, but iPad and phone is not the full boat. So for all of those who don't have that option. So Marilyn, did you
I
wanna
just
say
have a
some-
quick thing. When we went to Lipui and all those places on the tour a couple of years ago, they gave us a course in how those women felt. And the nun who gave it gave us the recording, or like the PowerPoints. She gave us books and everything. And I think I could find mine, but she said we could use that when we went back to our own chapters and, you know, try to get this kind of thing that Fran is talking about aroused in our souls, because they had so many stories of the old people. And of course, we visited some of their former houses and graves and all that, but that wasn't the heart of it. It was just reading and the journaling and the writing that we did was so awakening in us of that spirit. So if anybody's interested, I could get it out for Andrea and Joan and that to look at and see if that would be helpful.
So Marilyn, what did they say when you were on your tours? Did you go to the Hearth Place and
Yes.
see all of that? So and Maren, were you on that also? So maybe since this question is framed with Lipui, and let's see here, I got 7 minutes and 43 seconds, but who's counting? To maybe unearth some of that, since this question is regarding going back to the Lipui, if you could maybe flesh out a little bit for Fran and the rest of us that are here. Anita, what?
I was just going to add that I also was at that with not only the workshop, but our time visiting many things. And we were actually asked, and because she provided DIS, the workbook, the whole 9 yards, and we were literally asked to bring that back to have it become part and introduce it to the consortium world. And we had one presentation, but it was just really about kind of the visit. It wasn't anything in the depth. And I always felt that was a lost opportunity, that we really should have done the homework that was asked of us, and that we were privileged to have. And I would, in fact, I would bring her in for the workshop because she's like phenomenal. She does these workshops across the whole, all congregations, but in the CSJ world. But anyway, it's a good point, Marilyn. So thank you for bringing that up, because we were really asked. She says, I'm giving you all this material so that you can pass it on. We didn't quite live up to that. And I don't think it's the CSO office. I think it's the people who were there that can also be part of that, bringing it on. I just think it's all of us who attended there. And there was quite a few of us. There was at least 12 consociates.
So would that be something of value then to flesh this out, is to go back to those root type, where this is a root type foundation question. And we do have Zoom, although we all want to gather again, but if this person could come to us and provide some of this, maybe that could be kind of an action step almost out of this question of something. Fran?
What is
Patty?
what is the name of this person that you're talking about, Anita?
I remember, well, Barbara knows, I guess, but, or are you raising your hand for something else? I've got the materials. It's something to sale or something like that.
Jane, wasn't it Jane?
Jane.
Something.
Anyway, she lives in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
She's hardly ever home because she's on the road so much. But just keep in mind that this was how many day, Marn? We were there 5 days, 6 days on that workshop. So you can't just do a 2-hour thing in it. But the point of it is something that I think we should evaluate. And I think the new leadership group as a whole should take a look at it. I'm more than happy to dig up my materials and see what you could provide. But it was the grounding, but it goes back to, and I'm just going to say it goes back to being spiritually enhanced, but going out to do the work. This is not about the Holy Spirit totally. It is about Holy Spirit / doing the work and going out and coming back and being nurtured. And that's, to me, is why, I'll just say personally, the reason why I joined the CSJ community was that I didn't want to just do my community service work, my mission work in isolation, which I had done for years. I wanted to come back and be part of a community that would nurture what I was doing. I could help nurture other folks. And so to me, that's one of the key values of being a consociate. Anyway, I've said enough, sorry.
Marin?
Yeah, I'm wondering if her name was Jane Delisle. Does that?
That's her name.
Now I forget what I was going to say. One of the things I was going to say earlier was, I think when we came back, that was probably about the time that we were beginning to look at forming the new collaborative. So all of our focus was on that, which happens. We get caught up on going in a certain direction, and then whatever else is happening gets put aside to another time. And so maybe this is the right time for it to come forth again. But it seemed like it was several years ago was the last time we had done anything about looking at what we all were doing in the context of our lives. And so part of my response to this question is, in our own communities and in our own lives, we are addressing the needs of our time to the extent that we're able. But it would also be nice as a associate body if we could look at just, free form brainstorming all the things that we are doing, but also things that we would like to do that maybe we don't feel equipped to do personally, or because I think my feeling is that what we have doing, or what we have going now in terms of our various ministries, some of them have been started by consociates, but more are things that, have been going on with the sisters. And it seems like periodically, like every 7 years, maybe we should do a review, just cyclically take a look at this. I think that's all for now.
Thank you very much. Patty?
I just want to, I missed the last 2 sessions of this, so I'm kind of coming in on this with new eyes, I guess. But the reason I wanted to become a consociate was just for, I can't remember who said it, but to give me support for the work that I'm doing all the time. And I don't find that in my own church community. I don't find the same, the like-mindedness and the support that I need. And so that's what's really drawn me here, is to know that there's other people doing similar things, and to have that prayer support and that means of reflection with other people. So I'm not sure if that makes sense in what we're talking about, but, and I would be very interested in the written information about the Lupui community.
So in the chat, to the last discussion, Anita has, keep in mind, we have the mission expression and participation reports from the past 2 years. So I believe those kind of list all of the things people are working at. And then Jill says, yes, these mission expression and participation reports are online. So if you want to get a listing, but again, to that point of perhaps maybe when do we list, when do we assess? And then I'm struck with Barbara's coming home for dinner. And I think, at least for me personally, that's what I've been missing, is the coming home for dinner piece of it. And we don't have that on Zoom. Unless we're all eating individually, we're still a little box on the Brady Bunch. So yeah. The next question, and thank you, everybody. Oh, Carol.
Yeah, thank you. I think along with inspiration and support, I came to the community also to be challenged, to go, go to the edge where I might not go by myself. And I think that's important in the times that we're in, when we're asked to be bold. Those are the times when you really need your tribe, right? We're a tribe of 12 here, to help us move forward. So I think in any language that we come up with, or directions that we talk about, we're just going to have to step a little closer to the edge, to say we're going to do things that are uncomfortable, and we're going to do it in a way that has support. And I would tuck in too, and with the how, it sounds like it would be pretty easy to plan the consociate retreat around something of this topic.
It's a great idea. A great idea. The next question is really kind of a morphing into So we can continue on or kind of reframe it as, how do we, as the consortium, follow the founding principles of the Lipui community in coming together as a consociate body to nurture, support, and educate one another? And we've basically been in this discussion already, but we're hearing really good things. And if we want to continue for the next 16, 17 minutes on some ideas, heard a retreat, heard maybe finding out from the people who have been to Lipui, looking at their written stuff that they received, but maybe them being the leaven in our bread for some sort of gathering in person where we can go back to those founding ideas and the people who have actually been there to animate all of that with that energy. So with that, we have a little more discussion time, our sacred number of 12 here. So who would like to continue on?
I just was going to mention that Jill Underdahl wrote some kind of booklet about Lipui and the sisters there, and I haven't seen it yet, but I think that could be helpful.
Barbara.
Thank you. You know, we're saying consociates, but I'm just making the assumption we're talking about the community as well. Am I off?
Jill, committee? Karen?
It's a little, our primary focus is as consociates, but as we live our lives as consociates and as we come together as the consortium as a whole, we exist in relationship with the wider CSJ community.
But, you know, like, I mean, the program that Jane put together, you know, I think it was shared with us, you know, years ago. I think, Carol, you might have been part of that when you were in the Consociate Services office, but that was shared with the community. You know, would we be thinking of just doing it for consociate?
One thing, I think we can be open to how we do it. I know that one thing that we've been hearing from these sessions is really, really missing getting together with consociates and sisters and kind of having that reflection and discussion and dialogue. And especially as we know that we may not always be a province, really kind of doing a brain download from the sisters about what they know, and gleaning all of that wonderful information and wisdom. So I could definitely see it community-wide.
Karen.
In response to that, Barbara, I think you raise a really important question. And it has been raised a few times in previous dreaming sessions, and whether we are voicing the importance of the wider we, or whether we are voicing the notion that we're all part of a broader community. I think you raise a really important point, and that I believe as we analyze and put together these reports regarding the dreaming sessions and the surveys and the information, one of the things that probably will come out is how do we orchestrate this so that we are involving more and more and more bringing more and more to the table and involving, so many aspects of our own, literal right now CSJ community, but also the things that are being, drawn to our attention as a result of our racial assessment. So I think you raise a very, very valid point, and I think that will ultimately come out in the report. How it manifests in terms of action, remains to be seen, because the next step obviously is to synthesize this information, this data, and bring some analysis, framework to it. But then it's like, okay, what will happen as a result of that? So good. And don't worry, this is me, pencil and peg and everything. We're getting it, okay?
So kind of along with that, Karen, you're kind of saying, or what I'm hearing is, it's time. What our desire is as consociates to kind of, take a step into doing the work of doing that. Like of taking up the task of bringing the Lace Is Not Yet Finished to the community. Is that right? Or do I have a concept?
I think you're accurate, Barbara. I think you're accurate. It will just depend upon how all of these pieces come out and where we end up placing our priorities. But I think you are accurate. And I think this conversation is reflecting of both end, which is, let's look at our roots, have a real careful look at that. What are the spiritual components of that? But then the next is like, what does that mean for us? How is it made manifest? So I think it's a both end. You're right.
Anita says in the chat, the question for me is, how do we nurture one another as a community as we do our individual service ministry work? And I don't know if you want to comment a little more on that, Anita. And just one more, Carol says consociates could sponsor programming for the entire community.
And Peg has been trying to say something. She's got her hand up. So I'll yield the floor
Okay.
to Peg, and then I will expand on what I'm saying. Yeah. Thank you.
I was just listening to what, thinking about what Marilyn said about connecting, needing to connect together in community, small areas to say what's needed in my community. And thinking about the people feeling as the consociates grow, we often hear it's really hard to get to know people or feel connected. And so I was thinking, what if we thought about ministry, small ministry support groups? People that are in similar ministries could have kind of a little support group where they could talk to each other and share their struggles and difficulties and insights. Or also, I know in the past one time, one of the leaders in the Consociate Services Office tried to kind of help us organize into smaller groups in our locality. And I don't know how well that went, but we could again look at the idea of, as we're expanding as a consortium, would that be something that we'd like to do, is have smaller groups? Now we all have our sharing the heart groups and whatnot, but is that something that would help consociates get to know one another better, help them to share, feel more connected with the community, particularly with at least a few people? And the other thing was that balance between the consortium and the wider we, how to connect to the wider we, how to integrate and work on this Lace Is Not Yet Finished thing, but at the same time, how do we meet the unique needs and issues of we as a consortium? Because we're all in different phases of life. The way we do our ministry and such is affected by our lives. Are there specific needs and things that we need to address as a consortium at the same time as we're looking to make connections to the wider we? That's all.
Very well said. So Anita.
Well, I would just add to the fact that it may not be a geographical area but there's been consociates who have said to me, why don't we have affinity groups, that if you're into the homelessness, across the Twin Cities, you're going to be in this smaller group. If you are interested in another kind of ministry, So I've always thought that that would be a wonderful avenue for us consociates to not only witness and support each other in doing X type of ministry work. So it's a nurturing thing. It's also learning from each other, you know. So this, my organization sitting in Minneapolis dealing with homelessness, has this particular thing that's going really well. You know, does something over in St. Paul exist as well. So I just want to add to that, Peg, that and Marilyn as well, that, you know, that it might be another way of thinking about it. I'm just going to say that, Barbara, you raise a fundamental question, because if it's not a both and, you know, the real question for me then is, then do we really need a 2-year consociate program? Do we really need a consociate group? I mean, if the vision is, and I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying if the vision is that we just are going to be a CSJ community, then, you know, what does that, you know, then does the consortium even need to exist? I see it as both and. I think there's been an investment made in with the consociates. There's obviously, from the sister standpoint, there's been a value, and that there is a responsibility at this point. Again, I'm speaking just for myself, to strengthen the consortium. That doesn't preclude not reaching out, but to me, it's a both and. But we also have a core to nurture.
Carol.
Well, and building on that, this piece about nurturing, I think leadership, right? Of the different forms of membership, the sisters have made, you know, their 3 vows for lifetime. And consociates are the only other group who have also made a life commitment. And that's why the 2-year candidacy. That's why you see consociates as chairing committees and welcoming our partners, who are the St. Joseph workers and the friends and the people who are working in CSJ ministries and volunteering in CSJ ministries. So I think on support and this element about being a whole community, and I have a lot of energy about broadening my experience by being on committees with St. Joseph workers. I mean, that is not a section of my world that I get much exposure to. Mm-hmm. And I would love to learn more from them. And I mean, I could go on. The friends, you know, that's pretty special that they would step forward and make this commitment different than mine, because they're going to do it in a different way. So I see that we can still be different groups, but I would love to eventually, here's my imagination when we think about, you know, the way the St. Paul province is going to evolve into some kind of council that has equal representation from each of these different forms of membership, right? That are bringing our own ways of living this mission. I know that's not what we're talking about today, though, but I'd like to stick that in there. I think consociates will always be unique because our commitment is unique.
That actually, though, you've morphed us into the next question, which is, how do we share our unique gifts, and what do we need to develop as a consortium to fill our mission and purpose? So I think these are all very wonderful, interconnected questions. And Jill says, oh, Anita has said both and. Jill says, how do we share, oh, just what I said, how do we share our unique gifts? And what do we need to develop as a consortium to fulfill the mission and purpose? So Carol, you brought us there. Marilyn. Oh, you're on mute.
I think we already have something that could be enhanced. You know, when you become a consociate, you get a nun partner and you get a consociate partner, and then sometimes then you become a mentor yourself and you get, you know, somebody who follows you that way. And it's sort of like a chain like we had in high school, where you had the big sister and the little sister, and then, you know, somebody behind them. And but sometimes when they graduated, you didn't see them anymore. But here, even though you become a consociate, you still have relations with the sister you had, or the consociate companion, or whoever you companion then. And maybe I just feel this way because my sister died and we didn't have consociate companions. I mean, she was, you know, in a coma through most of my consociate program. So I never really got close to the nuns through her, or you know, we didn't have a consociate companion. But I think that these are really wonderful things, and that you could sort of form little families along that line that would be perhaps helpful, sort of like that meal at the end of the day kind of thing that you're talking about, Barb. I don't know.
Rosemary.
Well, one of the things that I think would be really helpful to develop is following, I witnessed it and participated in this in the working group, the Confronting Whiteness and Racism working group. And the leadership of that working group took one article, and then we worked with that article, and it was on white supremacy culture. And then we just, on each session, we worked with that, because as a group, we're not aware of what we are swimming in and what makes us unwelcoming to many people that are not white. And so, and I saw that, and they guided us, the leadership, they guided us, and they they led the discussion. It was very carefully guided out. And so it wasn't overwhelming, and there wasn't the reaction that that because we are part of white supremacy culture, because we have it within us and among us, and it's unconscious. It was done in a way that's like that. I was very encouraged, and I think that I think that that would be very helpful. You know, because this question is, how do we develop? And there is, you know, as Karen was saying, that there are things that where our awareness is going to be raised from the racial assessment. And so rather than go into overwhelm, like, or defensiveness, this was really a pilot, a guide of something, of a way that it could be done very lovingly, and really looking at the long range. We're not even through the article. We are still working with it. But the danger is when I have heard so many people say, we've got a working group that's doing that. And no longer can we say that, because we've got the racial assessment now. We can no longer say we've got a working group that will handle that. And it's like, well, where are the bold moves? If you are delegating that to a working group, it's too urgent, it's too pressing of what needs to be done as far as what we need, what we all need to develop in a very loving way.
Thank you. Fran.
Okay, if I unmute, you can hear me. So Rosemary, thank you for that. And what I'm extrapolating from that is not the specificity of what you were doing about a particular topic, but how people come together and study something or work together in an office. And it's that that repetition, it's that length of time you spend together, it's the goals that you have that are in common. So the process of sharing our unique gifts, I don't want to be specific, I want to be general when I say that if we can, and we do this, and we have to do more, I imagine, work together. Well, right now, here we are in this group, and we are listening and learning. And every time we've met for any of the discernment groups or any of the dreaming sessions, it's been wonderful because we're sharing, we're opening up to each other, we're getting to know each other better. This is the kind of thing that will help us to share our gifts and develop as a consortium. We have, and I don't, and you know, we're doing it by Zoom, and that, for me, that's okay. I mean, yes, I love to hug, and I would love to hug you all because that's what I do, but I also intellectually and spiritually get so much out of these groups. So I kind of put aside that need for the hugging and the being present and maybe paying more attention to body language because it is what it is right now. Okay, so, but just to get back on track and to say what we do together, whatever it is, whether it's going to a funeral with each other to celebrate the life of one of us, or it's being together like we are tonight, we are sharing and we are coming to know each other. And we are maybe even seeing faces that we haven't seen before or haven't seen much of. And so we can listen and say, oh, look, what a nice idea that is. That is just beautiful, you know? So I love that we do these kinds of things, and I know we need many more of them. So cut me off.
Carol, thank
Not-
you, Fran.
I heard my name, but I am no way cutting off Fran Murray. Yeah, I want to underline, I think sessions like these dreaming sessions and similar to what we've been doing in the Confronting Whiteness and Racism, where there is a simple focus and a circle of people who share their inspirations about it or become inspiration because we're sharing of that. And to that point, I want to lift up, yes, I want to be in person, and I think there's an energy about that. But even more important, I want to be broad. I want us to be inclusive. And that means that not everybody's going to live in the Twin Cities, or everybody's going to have an easy transportation to get to a meeting, or the timing isn't going to work if we kind of go back to a way it used to be. So I think I want us to be very intentional about who's not at the table. And yeah, I love just talking about a couple little big things with you and listening.
Thank you, Carol. Anita?
I just want to quickly add something, Carol, because I feel that there's been real value with these Zoom meetings because I've heard and I've worked with people that I've never worked with before, because in person, because we don't meet that often, it has become a circle of inner friends who sit at the same table, and you don't really get to hear everybody's voice. You don't get to know the new people. Sometimes we make an intention saying, okay, now we're going to sit with the new consociate, but it's not the same. And so I just have to say that I want both going forward, because I think from me personally, just what you said, all the reasons why people can't come to in-person meetings, we're also saving the earth, by the way, by not having all the meetings in person in St. Paul. I've saved a lot of gas money, as well as I'm really helping the earth here. But I'm just saying that I just have gotten to know people that I know probably in a large assembly I'm not sure the conversation would have ever taken place. So that's enough.
Thank you, Anita. But it does bring up, every group right now is grappling with what is post-COVID. Who is willing to leave their apartments? Some never will. There are people that are done with it and have been done with it for months. And so I guess that does feed into this question of the development, and who knows where post-COVID is going to lead us. Any other thoughts? I want to make sure everybody gets to speak. Patty.
I think Zoom does have its advantages, but being new to this group, I really want to see who you all are, or at least see a face in person. So I really, that's something that's really, I'm really struggling with right now. But I do understand the value of this too. And I think it can be both and.
Yeah, Patty, you don't even know how tall I am. I'm very tall.
I have no idea.
Oh,
I have no idea. I had to come in from outside because it started raining until I got inside and stopped. So.
Barbara.
Well, this is completely a little different realm altogether, but data would be helpful, in terms of, who's showing up for what. It gives you an idea of where the gaps are, and, who's not being reached by specific things, who's being left out. And I mean, it's hard to do, to know what steps to take if you don't have data like that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how, does the Consociate Services have the information on who has like an email address? Are we still with some people without email? Kathy?
Yeah, well, there's a very few people without email anymore. And, but there are a few. And we were keeping track like of who attended different events. But with Zoom, unless we ask people to register, it's not easy to keep track of that. So we haven't been doing that this last year.
So Anita says, our next survey will ask what preferences are in meeting coming forward. So that would be helpful.
Usually it's across the board, the answer is.
Fran.
I think it is both and I think we will never be able to serve each consociate in the specific way that she or he wants to be best served. But I think like anything in life, we just keep doing our best. We keep trying, we keep listening. And we try to have not too much of one thing to the detriment of having other things. So it's an exhausting job in some ways, but I think that we have to keep mixing the batter. Keep mixing the batter until it's time to drop the batter on the cookie sheet. And so I do think that I mean, I think the survey is a great idea to see what people's preferences are, but we'll never be able to take one road and say, oh, we're on the right road now. We've got it. No, we're going to have to keep shifting gears, pivoting. And just as in the time of when COVID was horrid and we did so much shifting and so much pivoting, and so, oh Lord, things have changed because of COVID. And I think we're smarter because of it. I hope so. And so I think we'll have to have a lot of electricity going in our heads and in our hearts, and just keep being attentive and keep offering different things, and be very broad and very wide open, and just listening to ideas and saying, you know, that's great. Well, we can do that. Why don't we do that at the next meeting? And then maybe the meeting after that, we do something a little bit different. And in that way, I think we'll develop a richness of communication and a richness of response. At least I hope so.
Barbara likes mix the batter and continue to invite. Any other thoughts? Anita's buddy idea, Marilyn likes. Patty?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if we do mix it up, I think the Zoom part of it will be even more, it'll work better for me anyway. It'll like, I feel pretty out of it right now because I haven't met most of any of you in person, but on the screen. So I really like that mix the batter.
Yeah. Thank you. Carol.
Well, I feel like I'm talking too much, but put your hand up if you want to turn. But I feel I have to say, when we talk about invite, how easy it is to invite people that we know, people that we like, people that are in the circles that we're already in. And so adding to the invite, I want to think about go out, right? Go be there, go be with them as who you are. And not always with an agenda to bring them in, but to mix up our own lives, right? And know that we're going to be coming down to supper with the people who have made this commitment with us. So always remembering.
Thank you, Carol. So we've had some good analogies: mixing batter, coming home for dinner, all things that are around a hearth and home, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. Marilyn.
I wanted to say something that Barbara McClellan was suggesting we do for Second Sunday. And she and another consociate who knows how to do this, where you have the meeting, but you still have connections to Zoom, and that then that means people who are really, outliers or from far away can get the flavor of the meeting even if they're not really there. And I haven't experienced this yet, and it is going to be interesting, but maybe it's something we can try as a larger group too.
Patty.
Can I just add to that? I think we should talk to school teachers who have had to do this all year long.
Yeah.
They may be able to give us a clue.
Amen. Fran.
Patty, I just want to take this opportunity to welcome you, but to ask you if you would tell all of us a little bit about you. I don't think I've ever seen your face before, and it's a wonderful face. Can you tell us? Can you give us some definition about who you are and how long you've been involved and where you're from and that kind of thing?
Well, I grew up in Golden Valley and went to Good Shepherd School with the sisters and Marian Wallstrom was my principal, my teacher and my principal, and she's now my, yeah, she we reconnected over the past year, and but I've been married. I have 4 grown children and 2 grandchildren, and I work with a lot of immigrants. I've done some prison ministry with the ICE detainees. I also am part of the St. Vincent de Paul Society, and so I have it's an outreach to those in need. And living in South Minneapolis, I've been very affected by all that's been going on here. But I also went to St. Kate's. I got my bachelor's in theology at St. Kate's, and then I got my master's in theology at St. Kate's. And I'm retired basically, more or less, not necessarily by choice. But I've worked in healthcare. The thing that I do most right now is I officiate weddings, and which is a real joy, because with my theology background, I really feel like I can give people a spiritual aspect that they may not even realize is there. And I can do weddings for people that the rest of the church can't. So.
And how long have you been a consociate, Patty?
I just started this year. So
Okay.
I'm brand new here.
Okay.
I've thought about it for years, but this was the time, I guess. So.
Well, you're very young looking for having 4 grown children and having done all the things that you've done. I thought you were really a youngster, but
no, not
poor
really.
woman. Poor woman. Yeah. So, thank you so much, Patty. That's wonderful. That's really wonderful.
And the fact that you're still here when we have had to pivot to something dramatically, no one, I mean, 3 years ago, would any of us have even dreamed that?
Oh, no.
No. So in pushing the reset button now, having this mindful. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so welcome. Glad you're here and you're sticking with it. Do we have any further thoughts as we move forward into the wrap up, which Karen will provide us with? Any last?
So I would just say that I am so excited that the new candidates have been so involved, like in enjoying joining these dreaming sessions or government discernment so early on in their candidacy. It's very hopeful for me. So thank you.
Yes. With that, then, Karen, are you up next?
I am on. Okay. Thank you, everybody. It's wonderful to have spent this last about hour and a half with you. And we're excited about this work. We, meaning the 4 of us that have been guiding this, and that is Anita Ducour and Jill Garcia, Peg Schwendeman, and myself. And so please feel free if you are thinking something, although you can't call me at 3 a.m, okay? But, you know, if something does come up and you're like, oh, that's a great idea, you know, make sure you let one of us know, okay? Or if you had another thought about one of these questions, there will be another survey coming out, because if you've been following the Method to Our Madness, the first 2 dreaming sessions in April and May were around sharing of the heart. And now we are in the order of the house. So if you've been following, and you might want to share something, from the past, that's fine too, okay? So we'll continue to dream, and ultimately what will come out of this will be something in relationship to, how we're going to put all of this together. And so we've been paying close attention. So we will compile information, we will synthesize it and analyze it and come to some conclusions. And then those conclusions we will share with you as a means of checking those conclusions to make sure we're accurate and that there isn't something else that needs to be said. And then all along, as Jill stated in the beginning, we're hoping that we can move ourselves as a consortium. And I wrote this because this is how I see it. A consortium that decides the future of the consortium. All of us together, working together, dreaming together to decide our future together. And in doing that, move us to a place of greater and greater inspiration and greater involvement, spirituality, communion with each other, all of those wonderful things. So that's where we're at. If you love this so much, you're more than welcome to join us again on Saturday, because we're going to be doing it ditto Saturday morning from 9:30 to 11. Well, not exactly ditto. I mean, it's going to be a different bat channel, a different bat time, and who knows who will show up, but we're going to do it again. Okay. So if you'd like to be involved and this is, good for you, come back, we'd love to hear some more. And we're taking Peg's out there. She was doing a lot, but see this copious notes. Okay. So we're really wanting this to be all about a consortium building a future for all of us together. So we can't thank you enough for spending the time, especially it's summer. Hello, but it's been great, and you guys have all been great. And I'd really like to thank Terry, because Terry's going to be back being our fearless leader again on Saturday. And then I want to thank every one of you for taking this time to be together with all of us on this lovely Thursday, but humid, take it down a notch, thank you, evening, okay? Can we do this for rain? Oh, please, okay, yes. All right, anybody else have any parting words? Anita, Peg, I think Jill's gone. Anybody have any parting words? I love your hat.
Thank you.
Anita.
Thank you, everybody. A great discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
great
you.
discussion.
Very nice.
All these dreaming
Thank you,
sessions.
everybody.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Take care.